You guys know I love CRTs, and I try to use them in my videos whenever possible, but getting them to look good on camera always comes with a few challenges. Let's look at a few ways we can go from this to this right now, here on Retro Bits. If, like me, you have fond memories of poking through the video game section of a Sears catalog or your favorite magazine as a kid, you're sure to remember the pages and pages of screenshots from all the latest releases. These photographs were generally taken on 35mm film cameras, either in a dark room, using a specialized rig, or sometimes with just a heavy blanket thrown over the screen and camera to reduce glare. Long exposures were used to eliminate raster effects, which generally meant either pausing the game or taking the shot in an area with nothing moving on the screen. You could often see the curvature of the monitor or other artifacts in the printed screenshot if you looked close enough. Some magazines honed their craft and did a reasonable job of it. Others, not so much. Thankfully, we've moved on from film cameras, but we still have to jump through a few hoops to get the best quality shots of our beloved classic systems. I'd like to think that I've improved my CRT footage over the last couple years, so I thought I'd share what I've learned with you guys today. This is the camera I've been using since I started RetroBits 5 years ago, my trusty Canon EOS M50. It's been a reliable partner, but it's an entry-level model and was never the right tool for filming CRTs. One of the most significant issues we're faced with is the need to synchronize the shutter speed of the camera to the vertical refresh rate of the screen. If the camera isn't in sync, your recording will capture the CRT's electron beam, drawing the image across the screen from top to bottom, left to right in a different position in each frame of saved video. When played back, the result is that familiar effect that appears in many YouTube videos, either a rolling line when the shutter speed is too low, or dark and light areas of the screen when set too high. Most cameras, including my Canon here, have an adjustable shutter with a fixed set of options. I can select between 1/30th, 40th, 50th, 60th, or 1/80th of a second, but nothing in between. For most vintage computers and consoles, this limited set of options isn't granular enough to match the CRT's exact vertical refresh, which may be something like 59.4 or 60.1 Hz. In short, it's basically impossible to film a CRT without capturing the raster bar when using this camera. With 1/50th and 1/60th, you can get close to the PAL and NTSC refresh rates, but there's usually some amount of variance between devices. That said, you can make good content using basic equipment, as I've done for years. Heck, there might even be a case to be made for leaving those rolling bars in. Over time, they've come to be associated with the nature of vintage displays and demonstrate authenticity to a degree. Sorry, shutter speed dad jokes. So maybe they're not so bad after all. Here's some good news. You don't have to buy an expensive camera to get rid of those rolling lines. In fact, you probably have everything you need already. For all my most recent videos, I've been using one of these. A $15 tripod mount will guarantee you a stable shot. Pro tip, if you need a tripod, your local thrift store always has a couple. Or a dozen. Don't know why. Let's take a look at the built-in camera app on my Pixel 9. Here in video mode, we can see there aren't too many options to choose from: exposure, white balance, resolution, and frame rate. Sometimes the app will sync to the screen and sometimes it won't. Really depends on the system. Fortunately, we can do better. Third-party solutions offer far more options. Blackmagic is probably the killer camera app when it comes to mobile devices. It's loaded with features, as you can see just from the viewfinder, but there are also pages and pages of settings as well. Blackmagic gives us full manual control of ISO, white balance, tint, and even offers a variety of built-in LUTs. Unlike the default camera app, we now have full control of the shutter speed. Unfortunately, like my Canon, the adjustments are only in large increments. While this is a huge step up, it's still not quite what we need. After testing many apps, I found this one called ProCam X. Like the others, it can record in 4K. You also have full manual control of focus, which is useful when dealing with Moire. More on that later. In addition, the app gives us manual control of ISO, which we'll come back to later. More importantly, it has shutter speed adjustments in increments of 0.1, which is exactly what we need. As we saw earlier, dark patches indicate when the shutter is too fast, and white bars indicate when it's too low. This helps us narrow in on the exact right setting. If I had one complaint, it would be the fiddly controls. It's near on impossible to scroll to the exact increment you want, and even if you manage to land on it, the moment your finger comes off the screen, the setting jumps, sometimes by 5 or 10 whole digits. I found that using a stylus helps to some degree, but it can still take 10 or 20 attempts to get the shutter speed you want, almost like playing roulette. Controls notwithstanding, I've been able to get solid results out of my phone and have used it to film CRTs in all my most recent videos. ProCam X is the only app I found on Android that meets the shutter speed requirements, and since I don't own an iPhone, I haven't been able to confirm which apps fit the bill in that ecosystem. Let me know in the comments if you're aware of any. The Canon has been my dependable partner since starting this channel, but there's no getting around the fact it's an 8-year-old entry-level camera. It's past time I stepped up my game. Did you notice this is the first retro bits in 4K? So I'd like to introduce the Panasonic Lumix S5 II. I'm still working through the 976-page manual, but going forward, this will be how I film CRTs and everything else.
Supersonic flight, gotta keep it going. Sonic boom, sonic boom, sonic boom, keeps you running fast.
My criteria when shopping for a new camera were as follows. First and foremost, support for the variable shutter speeds needed specifically for filming CRTs. Next, the ability to shoot 4K 60 and 6K 30 for some amount of future-proofing. Remote control via phone app, clean HDMI output for live streaming, and finally, no subscription-based or paywalled features. I'm looking at you, Canon. As delivered, the S5 II has standard shutter speed adjustments of 1/50th of a second, 1/60th, and 1/80th. It looks a lot like my old Canon actually, and of course none of these are suitable for filming Sonic here. The magic happens when we go into the settings and enable the feature called Syncro Scan. Designed to eliminate flicker from electric lighting, SynchroScan also lets us dial in the exact vertical refresh rate of the CRT. We can adjust the shutter speed up or down with the thumb wheel in increments of 0.1 Hz. Now, we can fine-tune our shutter to the exact frequency we need without having to deal with the clumsy user interface on the mobile app. And once we hit the magic number of 59.4 Hz, we can say goodbye to the rolling bars, at least for this particular game. Other brands have this feature as well, of course, including Sony's Extended Clear Scan, or ECS. Watch out though, because some models do have variable shutter with decimal increments, but they may not be granular enough. I've been shopping the S5 II against the Sony FX30, another really capable camera, and while the Sony does support fine shutter speed adjustment, it doesn't have ECS and therefore jumps 0.2 or 0.3 Hz per click. Documentation can be spotty, so be sure to do your research before buying. Regardless of whether you're using a phone or a standalone camera, there are a number of techniques that are important to know if you want to get the most out of your equipment. The next issue we have to tackle is moire, the wavy patterns you see caused by misalignment of the camera's digital sensor grid and the CRT's shadow mask or aperture grille. It can be an unwanted distraction in your video, but it's easily dealt with. The simplest way to get rid of moire is to alter the focus of your camera slightly until the effect disappears. This will result in a slightly softer image, which definitely makes this technique a bit of a compromise. You can also try positioning the camera at different angles relative to the screen to see what works best. Be aware that you can't totally trust your viewfinder or phone because of the way the image is downsampled for the small screen. This process can introduce another type of moire that isn't even present in the recording. I like to use a full resolution display such as this TV to see what my shot will actually look like when adjusting my focus, lighting, and exposure. I recommend you always leave autofocus disabled when filming a CRT. Not only does it result in moire, but movement on the screen or scene changes may cause the camera to focus hunt, which can really mess up your shot. The moire we want to eliminate can be subtle and difficult to spot on a small screen or viewfinder. Enabling your camera or app's focus peaking feature can help to highlight the patterns. Ideally, you want to defocus the smallest amount possible to eradicate moire while still keeping the image sharp. Try both near and distance focus in minute increments to see what looks best. One last thing. Soft focus isn't always a bad thing. Check out these two stills I took with the same camera of the same screen. Both are in focus, so which one is the correct shot to use? It really all comes down to your personal preference and the look you're trying to achieve. Bottom line, there's no single right or wrong way to film a CRT, you just have to experiment and see what works. Having said that, you really should consider using your camera's full manual mode to avoid improper exposure. You don't want your shot to be too dark or, worse, blown out. Here's my process. Start by setting the ISO. Try to stay near the native range of your camera, in my case 640. This will yield the best dynamic range and least amount of noise. Next, adjust the shutter speed to match the vertical refresh rate of the screen as we covered earlier. Finally, set the aperture or f-stop for the exposure you want. Note that most phone cameras have a fixed aperture, so for a given shutter speed, all you can adjust is the ISO. The brightness and contrast of your display might look good to the naked eye, but the same settings aren't always ideal for your camera, so you may need to adjust them. Use the histogram and zebra stripe features to dial in the image on the screen, while keeping the entire shot properly exposed using the camera's ISO and aperture settings. If you aren't able to use full manual mode, make sure that you at least lock the exposure to a bright scene before hitting record. That way, when dark scenes come up, the camera won't try to constantly adjust the exposure and mess up the shot like my Canon is doing here. let's turn our attention to lighting and reflections. See this spot? It's from the light in my front hallway, and you can find its reflection in many of my older videos. How about this one? That's the decorative window on my front door, and it shows up even on overcast days like today. In order to achieve the best possible contrast and image fidelity, try and eliminate any unwanted light sources and reflections by turning off lights and covering windows. Ah, that's better. If you just want to capture what's on the screen or take a still image, filming in a darkened room or at night is always an option. If you really want to go nuts, you could rig up a specialized hood like the magazines used to use, but that's probably overkill for our purposes. Often, we want to illuminate the entire scene while avoiding excess glare. Position lights to the side or above the screen and at an angle where they don't reflect from the camera's point of view. I still want to illuminate the desk and monitor bezel, just not the screen itself. While we're at it, consider the camera's angle relative to the screen. If you tilt the shot downward, it can often reveal reflections from your desk or keyboard. Filming at an angle will also make it harder to dial out Moire, and it can cause some of the screen to be out of focus. You can adjust the camera angle or rearrange your desktop to mitigate reflections, but framing the shot straight on will often resolve all of these issues at once. Accurate color reproduction is another important consideration. Okay, show me 10 different CRTs and I'll show you 10 different color calibrations. I get it. Still, it's important and easy to make sure your white balance is correct. We can either use the camera's built-in adjustment or we can fix it in post. Either way, you'll want a reference, so get yourself one of these 18% gray cards and film it. In Premiere, the easy mode is to slap the Lumetri color effect on your footage, and under basic correction, use the eyedropper. Et voila! If you want to be extra fancy, you can also use a color reference card with a plugin to perform more accurate color correction, but I've yet to take that leap myself. One gotcha that happens from time to time, especially on the PC, is a program may switch video modes, or you launch a game from DOS or Windows and the refresh rate changes in the middle of your recording. There's not really that much you can do about it except film the sequence twice at the required shutter speeds and edit the footage back together in post. If you're trying to film multiple CRTs showing different things in a single shot, well, good luck to ya. It can be done with clever masking, but that's beyond the scope of this video. Another gotcha. If you're filming at 60 frames per second, you may not be able to adjust your shutter speed lower than 1/60th. Some cameras let you override the limiter, but doing so may result in unwanted motion blur. Why does this matter? Many games run natively at 59 point something vertical refresh and utilize flashing effects. If you film them at 30 FPS, not only will the motion be less smooth, but the flashing may be out of sync with the shutter and cause weird artifacts like the character disappearing completely. The solution? Only film games that run at 30 FPS, of course. But seriously, for 60 FPS content, you'll sometimes need to choose between filming at a lower frame rate, living with a slight motion blur, or the dreaded rolling line. This kinda goes without saying, but CRTs are magnets for dust and debris, especially if, like me, you own pets. When shooting close-up shots, this stuff stands out like a sore thumb. For fingerprints or other smudges, I just use a little glass cleaner on a microfiber cloth. For dust, lint, and cat hair, I always keep a Swiffer duster nearby. These things are great for a quick touch-up between scenes, and for giving your collection a once-over every so often. Ah, there we go. Ready for the next scene. Credit where it's due, LGR made a fantastic video about filming CRTs that was super helpful to me when I was just starting out. I've tried not to be too derivative in this episode, but naturally there's going to be a good amount of overlap. Another great source of information is Jim Leonard's how-to blog on vintage computer photography. Both of these guys are far more knowledgeable than I am, but I got this brand new camera and needed to learn how to use it, so what better way than to share what I found as I worked through the process. I hope you found something in here useful, and do check out these other great resources. Links are in the description. One tip I learned from LGR was that the 15 kHz whine from televisions and monitors can get recorded by your microphone. It's been many years since I could hear it, but I still make a habit of slapping a parametric EQ preset on all the affected clips so younger folks won't have to listen to that annoying sound when they watch the video. While you can use your camera's built-in mic to record audio from your TV or speakers, another option is to use a splitter cable like this plugged into your source. One end goes to your TV or speakers. The other will be used to record the line-level audio directly. Some cameras only support mic-level input. If that's the case, you can use one of these line-to-mic converter cables to capture the computer audio directly in your recording. If you want to record ambient sounds with your microphone and direct line-level audio, one option is to use a separate digital audio recorder such as this one. In your video editing software, drop both the camera clip with ambient audio and the direct recording on your timeline, then use the synchronize feature to align them together. It's an extra step, but it's worth it to take your audio from this to this.
Okay, that's a lot of stuff to remember each time you press record.
Fear not, because I've boiled it down to a mnemonic that's easy to remember. Well, sort of. Always start with lighting. Get your scene set up properly and minimize any unwanted light sources or reflections. Next, set your ISO to your camera's native value. You may have to come back and tweak this a bit later, depending on your lighting, lens, and available f-stops, but this is a good place to start. Set your shutter speed as close to the vertical refresh of the CRT as you can to eliminate rolling lines and dark patches. Finally, adjust the aperture of your camera to get the exposure you want. If using a mobile phone, this may be a fixed value, so you'll have to go back and adjust the ISO instead. Now that we have the shot looking good, we can fine-tune things a bit. First, calibrate your white balance. Using a reference card, adjust your camera or leave it set to auto white balance and record the card so you can adjust things in your editor. Enable your camera's histogram and check it to validate your exposure settings. Go back and adjust your lighting, CRT contrast and brightness, aperture, or ISO as needed. Now check your audio. Are the levels good? If using an external recorder, remember to cue it up and press record on both devices at the same time. Finally, check to make sure you've dialed out Moire and everything you want to be in focus looks good. Use a larger external display if possible to check your shot one last time before pressing record. Now you know everything I've learned about filming CRTs so far. Bear in mind, I'm not an expert at this stuff, far from it. I'm still learning as I go and constantly working to improve my own technique. My advice to you is get out there and start filming your own setups, and don't be afraid to experiment with all the different options and settings available. Something I missed or got completely wrong? Perhaps you've got your own tips or techniques to share. Leave a comment and let me know.
If you found this helpful, please share this video with someone, and don't forget to check out our back catalog of other interesting content. I hope you enjoyed this bit. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Retro Bits.